Yes. There we are.
Aha.
We are live.
Wonderful.
All right, I guess I'm just going to start speaking as I usually do. Good evening, everybody. Live from Music Talks. It's us again. Abigail Richards tonight as our special guest, wonderful pianist, accompanist, vocal coach par excellence, who will be our host tonight, interviewing Axel Everaert, the famous, infamous tenor extraordinaire and a voice professor, and myself, Susanne Schimmack. So welcome.
The famous, infamous soprano, mezzo-soprano, contralto. She has been everything, and she still is sort of everything. And a voice teacher, amazing singer, and amazing, strong personality.
I think he's telling me I should talk less.
No, that was a compliment.
On that note, I will gladly give the word to our host, Abigail. Abigail, the eyes are on you.
Thank you very much. So I thought it would be interesting just to find out some background information because a lot of our students know you at this stage, but of course, so we learn little drips and drops of information through anecdotes and little stories, but it's interesting to go back to the beginning, I think. And so it would be really fascinating to start off by finding out how you discovered this talent for singing and at what point you decided to seriously consider making it into a career. Should we start with ladies? So maybe Susanne?
It's actually quite unglamorous, the story. So when I was a little girl, I was determined to be a vet. It was the time where we had these movies, those books by James Herriot, the veterinarian that had who was practicing his art and his profession.
All creatures great and small.
All creatures great as well. And I was madly in love. I thought this is just fantastic. This is my profession. And I thought the only decision to be made is whether I would go into small animals or big animals. I found it completely fascinating that you would insert your whole arm into a cow. But as you see, I didn't turn out to be a vet after all, because when I was a child, we lived in this house that had a marble staircase. And when I would go down from our apartment and I would go out of the house, there was this echo in the staircase. So I would go down and go like, whoa! And I just fell in love with the sound. Just really electrified me. I thought this is super. This is fantastic. So that was one thing. And the other thing was that my father would listen to all the great jazz singers. I grew up listening to Shirley Bassey, Sarah Vaughan, Billie Holiday. And they were my heroines, Shirley Bassey in particular. So I thought, this is what I want to do. If I'm not going to be a vet, I want to be a singer, or maybe both. And this was my beginning, really.
Yeah, but so you didn't grow up in a musical family?
Well, not at all. Well, nobody in my family actually is a musician. However, there was always music being played. My father would, when I was a little child, he would play me Swan Lake, Schwanensee, and would tell me the story of Odette and Odile. And I was madly fascinated by this world that is beyond also the Carnival of the Animals and Camisas, and Peterchen's Mondfahrt, where there's orchestration. And no, I have no musicians in my family. No.
So when did you actually start studying the voice?
I started, as most children do, I started playing the flute, the recorder, but I found that extremely boring. Very. So I just didn't show, I just wouldn't go. And then I had a moment where I wanted to play the guitar. Looking back, I think I wanted to play the guitar because I thought I could accompany myself. But also that was annoying because, there was technique and you had to practice. And I was like, nah. So I didn't go there either. So when I was 15, I really got on my parents' nerves. And I said, I want to, and they found me a voice teacher who was a Hungarian bass. very, very Hungarian bass. And he said, we had the first lesson, and he said, yeah, but why do you want to sing jazz? This is like, no, 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 no. So I believe my first two arias ever, I mean, we didn't really spend much time with anything. I think my first two arias ever were Carmen and Lady Macbeth. So then
Started, you mean to go on?
I was like, whatever. Yeah. So yes.
And so was it quite obvious to you from that point that you would go into the direction of applying to conservatoire? Did you follow a traditional opleiding education, let's say?
No, from the point when I started taking voice lessons, it became very clear immediately to me that this is something that I can do. I was a fat child, and I never really felt at home in any group back then. And all of a sudden, there was this world. Back then were the days when opera singers still were fat and could be fat. So it was like I was entering this world of acceptance, and all of a sudden, I was somebody because I had the voice in the world of opera. That was all that mattered. Um, and also the sensation. It's really, as I'm trying to find words to describe it, I realize I never really thought in those terms. I felt a very deep connection between my sound and myself back then. So it was absolutely clear that this is something I would want to do. And then the next step was I realized then that there is an opleiding, that you do actually study music. And so I finished school and I applied to several conservatories. I did entrance exams and failed them all because nobody had taught me about theory. I couldn't play the piano. Oh, yes, the voice is so dark and it's so big and it sounds so old. And why don't you sing some lighter stuff? And I'm assuming that some of you behind the screen online will be laughing now, maybe relating to the experience, maybe recognizing some of this. Yeah.
Very common, I think, yes.
Yeah. And do you want me to just go on and tell you how I then got into?
Please, I think it's fascinating because that's, we often think, like a star has been born and then they open their mouth and everybody welcomes them with open arms and there you go straight forward onto the stage. But the fact that you overcame those first moments of failure and you stuck at it, that's great.
There were many moments of failure also later on to come. I mean, I'm happy to speak about those moments because they also shaped me and who I am as a person and as a singer and as a teacher. But back then I was a star of my own right. I would go to bed at night, and when I after turning off the lights, I had this collection of Maria Callas records that I bought on the flea market. And a lot of them were telling the story how Callas sang at La Scala. So for me, I would go, my last image before going to sleep would be, and you're going to think I'm completely gaga, me on the stage of La Scala. That was my last thought before I would go to sleep. That changed very quickly, but yeah, so I failed all the entrance exams. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe this is the moment. You're not made for this and you might need to do something else. My parents also were terrified of me, learning the flute and dropping it, learning the guitar and dropping it. Now she wants to be a singer. Oh my God. So they said, well, can you please take a profession and then you can do whatever. And I thought, yeah, well, what? And I sort of half-heartedly applied to be a journalist and I half-heartedly applied to a PR agency. And then I had the idea, I'm just going to call a theater. I mean, where do singers go? They don't go to school, they go to theater. So I called the theater in my hometown in Dortmund and I said, I want to be a singer. What is it I need to do? And they were laughing and I said, oh, we think you should drop by. Why don't you come by? And they made an appointment and we talked a bit. And then they said, well, this is what we could offer you at this moment. The next production will be Trovatore by Verdi with Keith Warner directing, who was still nobody back then, basically, or yeah. And we invite you to be to do like a stage with us. You can sit in all the rehearsals, you can listen to the singers. And I thought, oh wow, I'm going to the theater, fabulous. So I said, yeah, yeah, I'm coming, I'm coming. And I went to the first rehearsals and I thought, what the fuck is this? There are people in sweatpants rolling on the dirty rehearsal stage. You know, this is not what I want to do. Let them do it, but this is not what I'm going to do.
This is not the glamorous La Scala image.
Nothing to do with the stage of La Scala. And this has nothing. What am I doing here? You know. But before I knew it, a couple of things started happening. One of them being that Keith spoke English. Some of the German singers were not very fluent, so I ended up translating. And also, you know, of course, I got myself a Trovatore score, and within 2 weeks, literally, I knew all the roles. I could sing. Well, I couldn't sing it, but I could, you know, sing Azucena. I could sing Leonora. I could sing, you know, Di quella pira. And I was all of a sudden part of this family of opera and of theater.
Which is intoxicating.
Which is, yeah, it is. There's something about it that is just so different from all other group experiences, at least back then for me, coming out of I'm the only child, you know, no musical background. I was the, you can imagine, I'm loud, I talk a lot, I was always too much of everything. And all of a sudden I was not too much anymore. I was just in the right place.
Mm.
And then the lady who sang Azucena, Jane Henschel, came up to me and she said, you know, you look like a singer. Do you sing? Now, I was tempted to find a picture for you. I was really big at that. I had Axel nose. I had really long, very long, curly red hair, and I weighed like 100 kilos. So when I walked in, you could not miss me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, oh yeah, of course I look like a singer. I'm made for this. And I said, yeah, I do sing. And she said, well, why don't you sing for me? And I sang for her, and she recorded it, and she sent it to her American teacher, and the rest is history. I was offered a scholarship to go to university and study voice in America, and that was the end of all the German conservatories. And well, for a moment, it was the end. We might get back to that at a later point, but this is really how it happened.
But the door opened to a whole new adventure.
Oh yeah, and then it was about, you know, finding money because I'm not a citizen. You cannot work if you don't have a work permit. You have to pay tuition, out of state tuition. So it was pretty clear that and you have to prove to the American government that you have enough money to sustain yourself, and also to be transported out of the body out of the country in case you die. Your body needs to be taken, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you know, there was a lot of things to overcome and a lot of problems to solve, but
Mhm.
it
It
was
was also a leap of faith to go there.
completely. I mean, I was what, 18?
Yeah.
You know, I met the teacher, Nina Hinson, my American teacher. She had a friend in Freiburg. And we met once for like 20 minutes. She said, sing something. And she said, yeah, see you in fall. That was that was the story. Yeah, so I went. I didn't know where I was going to live. I had no clue that, you know, in California, you need a car. You can't just move there. So I literally lived in Hollywood Hills for like 6 months in her house. She was one of the most generous people. She gave me the code to her alarm system. She gave me the keys to her Volvo, and she said, "Here, make yourself at home." And I cannot. This is it. It's not of great importance for what we're going to talk about today, but it's very sentimental. She had this big Volvo, and the license plate read AH to sing, Ah to sing.
Hmm.
I felt like such a star driving the car around Hollywood because it's like, you know, this is what my life will be later on. Well, little did I know. But
But I think that's a really important point that even at the beginning, even if you really know very little, this whole sort of visualization, of course, we fill in more and more of the details as we learn more about it. But I think that enormous conviction of, yes, this is how I belong and where I belong, and this is what I'm going to do to make it happen, is such an essential part of the drive to get where you go, right?
absolutely, I think no talent on the planet and no intelligence and no can get you where the determination and your inner drive will get you. In fact, if you are lacking that, you might not get anywhere. And this is something that I find when I was young, it was easy because it was like I knew I wanted to do this. I was supported by a lot of people, and it was almost like a game. I felt like there's nothing to lose, but everything to gain.
Yeah.
As I get older, I realized there is more and more to lose, right? But yeah, and I also, in this determination and this drive and this quest that I was on, really this American time, which was 4 years, plays a big role because in Germany, I'm German, I'm a native German, for those of you who don't know. And in Germany, I don't want to say you grow up with limitations, but in a way, you know, when I grew up in school and I said, I want to be an opera singer, they're like, yeah, right, she's going to be an opera singer. Yeah, yeah. It's like, so you're put in a box and then it's your job to find out of it. And if you don't make it, people will say, yeah, of course, we knew that all along. And if you do make it, they say, well, I mean, this is like, you know, well, she's going to see where she gets it when she gets older. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In America, it's not like this. People are like, oh, wow, this is what you want to do. If you need anything, let me know. Anything we can do to support you. The American dream, as cheesy as it sounds, at that moment when I arrived, was alive. If you want something and you are willing to put in the work, we're going to move mountains to help you. And they really did for me. They really did.
So that cultural difference became actually quite empowering.
It became very empowering and it became really my second nature. I had problems coming back to Germany. I felt imprisoned when I came back at first. I felt, you know, this is not where I should be. This is not where I belong. But in the long run, and I think you know that, I really I have become this mix of all kinds of cultural perspectives, and it to me it really doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that you need to carve your own path.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you need to do that, you do that.
Yeah.
Whether you go to Bulgaria or to America, or you stay in your birthplace, or you whatever you feel you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that comment about, you know, you take on a lot of different elements. I think that's probably something that's quite common for a lot of singers, because you do come into contact with so many people from different backgrounds and different walks of life. And the very nature of, I think, you know, the good artists also really take that on board and incorporate that. And something about that openness, which also helps in the work. Yeah.
The work we do really calls for it. You need to have your antennas out most of the time, right? Because you are observing people, you're observing, it's almost like role study. You're observing people, you're observing structures, you're observing dynamics between people, you observe languages, you listen to the sound of languages. Even if you don't speak it, you might develop a proficiency or efficiency in imitating it. So I think this is very, very important to be observant and to be I'm tempted to say free of judgment, but in a way that's what it is. It is not about I'm going to follow my own path and that's the only thing that exists. It's more for me. I'm going to follow my own path and I'm going to have all my senses open to everything that happens on the roadside.
Yeah.
Loud cars, little cars, big cars, trees, flowers, animals.
Yeah, exactly. But speaking of language proficiency and carving out your own path, let's ask the same question to Axel, because I think you took a very different path, right?
Well, it was a different one because there are some parallels. So first, I never made a choice. I knew I was going to be an opera singer until
From what age?
Perhaps from 9 on. What happened is my aunt had been an opera singer, but that was long before I existed. So I basically had no idea about it. I knew that she had been a singer, but you know, without any further details as a child. But she was a very good friend. So, and when I went to visit her, I went on holidays. We were living on the countryside. She was living in town, so that was very exciting, of course. And then she would sing a lot with me. And her brother-in-law happened to be the choir conductor of the National Opera in Brussels. And so, as I was always there for holidays, so it was Easter and they had big dinners, or it was Christmas and they had big dinners. And after dinner, they would take my shoes off and they would put me in the middle of the table between the crystal glasses and the plates, and I would sing whatever. And I basically sang the scores my aunt had. So I sang Lakmé, the L'Air des Clochettes. I sang The Queen of the Night.
All the big
I
hits.
was a very, very good Titania in that day, in those days. Don't.
What has changed?
And so I sang, and God knows how it sounded. I'm very happy there are no recordings of those periods.
We're sad.
I don't know. I think it's good for humanity that those things disappeared. Anyway, so when I was 9, I was invited to sing in the opera house, and I started in the children choir, and for some reason, quite quickly, I became a soloist, and I did the solo part when there were solo parts to be done. Actually, one of my solo parts was in Peter Grimes, and it's a part where you don't have to say any word. You just have to cry the whole time and feel miserable. But then it finished, it got a little bit more serious with the Zauberflöte, and then it got very, very serious with Ignolde, which was a difficult task for somebody who didn't read music like me. I had no idea. And so that's basically the time when I decided, I had a plan before that. I wanted to become a pâtissier because my mother had a cousin who was a very posh pâtissier. And, I liked it very much. I basically liked the wrapping of the Easter eggs with the ribbons in silk and the flowers and all the details. I didn't know about the getting up so early and all the more naughty things. Anyway, so what happened is that I put away the idea of becoming a pâtissier, and it was clear when I was 10, it was clear I would become an opera singer without any further questioning to it. So that's where Susanne and myself, we are going parallel. Another parallel is that when I was 18, I decided to do entrance exams. So when I was 16, I think 15 or 16, I was accepted in a music academy where I found, pure by chance, because it was the music academy next to my house. So there was no selectioning or thinking about where to go to which teacher. But I was quite happy and quite fortunate to get a teacher, Rita Piron, who was at that time a student of Rita Streich. So that was already the high school. And so I studied with her 2 years, and then I decided to do entrance exam in the Belgian conservatoires. And to my terrible disappointment, I was refused everywhere. And they said I just didn't have enough voice. Okay, so my father was relatively happy about it. And he said, well, there is no problem. You go to university, you do whatever master degree. It was not master's in my day, it was called licence. But basically, it's what master is now. You do whatever, and afterwards you can study singing if you still want to. And that's how it happened. I went to Leuven, to university. I became a licenciate in musicology. And during my musicology studies, I think in the third or in the fourth year, no, probably in the third year, I got in contact, because I was preparing a master thesis on mad scenes in Italian opera between 1810 and 1840. And those days, there was no internet, it was just libraries and personal contacts. And so via, I got in contact with an Italian professor, musicologist, who was going to be my anchor in Italy for getting in contact with some really important people for bel canto musicology. And we called, and then I would go I went twice to Italy to meet him and to come back with photocopies and fish and all kind of paper things, and very interesting. And so in one of the evenings we were just talking, and he said, yeah, oh, and how did you come to that? And I said, well, actually, I wanted to be an opera singer, and I still want to be an opera singer. It's still my plan. And then he said, oh, well, if you want to be an opera singer, you have to sing for my father. And then it turned out the name of the professor was Antonio Zino, and his father was Ottavio Zino. And Ottavio Zino was one of the important Italian conductors of the 40s, 50s, 60s. A guy who had been conducting in Scala, in San Carlo in Napoli, all the major Italian theaters, with all the famous singers. And so I was put in a taxi, I was driven to Ottavio Zino, and there I did my first audition. And Ottavio Zino said, well, yes, definitely a very musical guy, but there is not so much as a voice. So they started thinking who could do the work, and I was brought in the same company, went on the same evening in a taxi to Gianella Borelli, and she was then the one who started working with me in Italy. And that's how I got in Italy without any, not really with a plan. Yeah. It just happened to me.
Yeah. What's fascinating with both of your stories is that actually the push, let's say, came from a very unexpected corner.
Definitely.
And that's what's so interesting so often about this line of work. The inspiration or those trigger moments can really come from someone from whom you wouldn't expect it, but it's about having a certain openness and a certain passion about what you do, and somebody just picks up on that and sort of throws you out into the world again.
Absolutely. As long as you know that that is what you want to do.
Yeah.
And not just, or perhaps I would like to sing, or I could become a pâtissier. I will probably earn more money becoming a pâtissier. I didn't think so at those days. I thought I would become more rich by singing. That has been a big disappointment.
but like snuggle, because those of you who have been around us who know that in a lot of ways, Axel and I could not be more different.
You think so?
You know, we do have our touching points, but and it's so funny. I wanted to insert my arm into a cow and be a vet, and Axel wanted to be a pâtissier and wrap the Easter eggs. It's so descriptive of nothing. It's amazing. Nothing.
I think you make many happy cows.
Well, I'm still very fond of cows. I really am.
But not getting in.
Sorry.
But not getting in.
Well, if I had the chance to, I might, but nobody has. And if anybody's out there who would like to give me the opportunity, I'll
send your emails at a later date. Let's carry on with Axel for a moment, and then we'll come back to Susanne. So continuing on, would you say that then there is a moment that you would consider as the moment that launched your career?
Definitely. Definitely. So there I was studying in Rome. The studying in Rome was very, very old-fashioned. I had 3 lessons a week, long lessons, because my teacher tended to like me. I was a polite person, and she spoke French, so she was very, very happy that she had an occasion to speak French. So that arranged myself the long lessons, and especially the last lesson of the day, because then she was looking forward to speaking French, and so that was a long one. And during 6 months, I didn't sing any word or song or line. We just did on separate notes, and eventually on 2 notes, and then on 3 notes. 6 months long, 3 lessons a week. And then basically she started to prepare a repertoire for me. And she said, after six months or 8 or 10 months, I don't remember precisely, she said, well, the problem is your voice is not very big. It's not particularly beautiful. It's not ugly either, but it's not this kind of instrument where you say, wow, you possess a Rolls Royce. So she said, if you want a chance to survive, you have to sing quicker coloratura than the others, and you have to sing higher than the others. So that was the next program. And then we prepared quick coloratura and high notes. I was not so much aware how, but eventually it came out. And then she sent me to a contest, a small, relatively small contest, Pergolesi contest in Rome. And she said, you go and, you just see what happens. In the jury was Anita Cerquetti, who is, the last person you would expect in a contest for Baroque music. But anyway, there was Cerquetti. That's, by the way, a recurrent fact that in the juries of my contests where I sang coloratura, I met people, I met Birgit Nilsson and Grace Bunbury, who were also not necessarily the people you would expect in a coloratura contest, but there they were. And so I won the contest by pure chance. And she said, well, since you won, you should perhaps see what's around of other contests. And so there was this is then already after 4 years of studying in Rome. There was a contest in Stuttgart, which was organized by Silvia Gesti, a famous German-Hungarian coloratura soprano. And it was the International Coloratura Contest, Internationale Koloraturgesangswettbewerb. We were in very good company with Nadia Michael and with who more was there? The names now escape me. Egil Silins was there. We had quite a lot of people who made it afterwards. Nathalie Karl, Marlies Petersen, who is having an important career. And so they all were in this contest. And strangely enough, I went as a tourist to the contest. I never had sung with an orchestra before, but I had sung with a Baroque orchestra after winning the Contesto Barocco, the Pergolesi. And there, again, I won for some strange reason, because I think I had quicker coloratura than the others, and I could sing high notes.
So maybe it wasn't luck after all.
I don't know. I think it was just a lack of that kind of voices in that moment. I don't know whether I would win with that repertoire nowadays. But there I was, and that's really what started my career, because there I met an agent, Herta Kühnli in Stuttgart, and she already came to me after the first round. And she said, I'm interested. I don't have a light voice. I need a light voice who can do the high repertoire. Would you be interested? Yeah. And it also, I went like, yeah. Having no idea. I was absolutely green and I had no experience. As I said, I sang the Rondo Finale from Barbieri Siviglia in the finale of this contest in Stuttgart. And it was the first time I ever sang with a symphonic orchestra. I was amazed that there were so many of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a hard way to learn it, but
Absolutely. I just want to underline one thing that you said, because it passed by actually very quickly, but the agent approached you after the first round.
After the first round, yes.
This is really interesting, because I think a lot of singers think that they should win the competition for people to be interested in them. But actually, from my experience of speaking with some agents, they don't even often go to the finals, because they don't need the vote of confidence from other people for themselves to know whether they like somebody or not and whether they find it interesting. So a lot of times they go fishing in the first rounds or in the semifinals, but the final doesn't necessarily determine anything. And that's what you also prove.
And Herta Kühnli was a very, very fine person. And she really had a plan. She really started a plan with me. Yeah. And she told me what to study and what to learn and where to go. And it was like a mother. Well, she was not as old. I don't remember. She seemed young to me, but she really was like a mother, taking me by the hand and telling me what to do and where to go. Really, and that's how it started.
Yeah. And I just very quickly want to circle back to what you were explaining about with your learning process. You said you spent months just doing and you were told that you maybe didn't have the most beautiful or the big voice.
Lots of times.
Was this ever dispiriting for you? Did you ever feel, like, what am I doing here in Italy? Or was that not a question?
No, I was going to be famous. My aim was La Scala.
Mm-hmm.
Not to Metropolitan because I knew it was too big for my voice, but La Scala, Napoli, and well, why not the Teatro Colón? Because it has excellent acoustics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you knew that was just part of the process, and that you
Absolutely.
kind of like the
Absolutely.
preparation work that you were absolutely prepared to accept.
I'm still amazed about the stupidity of myself in those days. How can one be so sure of such a thing? But there was just no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
The
Sometimes
doubts
that's
came
wonderful.
later. Well, not necessarily the doubts, the deceptions came later.
Well, yes, yeah, yeah. And what about for you, Susanne?
That's a really tricky question because I could kind of pick out a few moments actually, but I would say I had two, well, maybe three sort of moments that kind of made the path made the path clearer. On a professional level, it was that when I was still in school in California, I already started receiving offers, and then my first ever professional role was Wagnerian. It was one of the Valkyries with Arizona Opera. They did a whole ring, and I was like, I think I was, well, like 20 or something. I was Ross Weissel,
Mm.
and that was the first time anybody actually really gave me the feeling, or I felt confirmed in my expectation that one day somebody's going to come and offer me this, and they're going to pay my flight to go wherever, and they're going to pay me a fee and put me in a costume and put me in a 5-star hotel, and and that it was all that. I
Mm.
was living in a golf resort during the rehearsals. It was amazing, and I thought, "Oh, this is fab! This is gonna go on like this." Well, but this was the first moment that when I was the youngest in the entire cast, and I was not. Nobody gave me the feeling that, oh well, you're the baby here, you're not in the right place. It was I was that was one thing. The second thing was then when I didn't finish my studies in California because my father came down with leukemia, and I felt it was I needed to be at home because I was expecting him to pass.
Mhm.
So I sold everything, my old little Chevrolet that I had bought in California. I sold everything and I went back to Germany. And the same opera company that had offered me that stage years before, I called them up and I said, I'm back. Can I come and sing for you? And I said, well, yeah, you can come, but we have no vacancy. We cannot hire you. So I went with 4 arias in my bag, and it was Erda from Das Rheingold, it was Azucena, Stride la Vampa, and it was Dalila, and I don't know what the fourth thing was. And I sang the first piece, and then I sang the second piece, and then I sang the third piece. And then they said, "Do you have a moment? Can you please? The our intendant would like to speak to you." So I went to his office, and he said, "Okay, now here's the deal. We have no vacancy, but I've made 2 phone calls, and we're offering you a contract, a beginner's contract, as of fall. There is somebody, a privatier, who will pay your fee for a year." So I signed like the contract on that day. And my first role then was third lady in Zauberflöte. Then it was Anina in Rosenkavalier. It was Marcellina in Figaro. It was Maddalena in Rigoletto. And then that kind of the path just sort of shaped itself. But this really was the moment that, I mean, I came back expecting to be in the middle of nowhere, and immediately something picked up.
Mhm.
And this, I think, really was the moment that launched my professional life.
Mhm.
To kind of connect to what Axel said about competitions. I think then the launch of my international singing life was Cardiff Singer of the World.
Mhm.
But that's a story all to itself. But I would really, the Wagnerian path opened immediately, and it was confirmed on many occasions because it always made me, the Wagnerian repertoire always made me feel at ease, and made me feel like, oh, I can just, do what I need to do without
Mhm.
pleasing the voice, and yeah, so.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, you both got this kind of launchpad, but in different ways. So Susanne, you were sort of straight into a Fest contract, basically. And Axel, you had this wonderful agent who could guide you in presumably putting you into repertoire houses.
Yes, I never had a fest contract.
Right,
Also
exactly.
because my repertoire was, you know, if you have the tenor for that specific kind of roles, you don't have 5 roles a year for that kind of tenor.
Exactly. These are the kinds of roles where they will specifically look to hire in somebody
Absolutely.
externally. So you had, let's say, maybe more of a suitcase-based existence.
Oh, yes.
And maybe for Susanne, it was a little bit more in one place, at least for the beginning.
They
So
had house moving, which is worse.
yeah. So I think what would be interesting was to know from both of you, how did you establish routines? In making sure that you were healthy, that the voice was healthy. Did you have a particular vocal teacher or a coach that you were in regular contact with? How did that work for you to, or did it sort of go horribly wrong for a little bit and then realize that you actually had to do something about it? Maybe let's start with
Hmm.
Axel again.
No, it didn't go wrong. I just uh, was trained in Italy. That was my first teacher. I had then other teachers, but I was trained in this very, very, very systematic way.
Mhm.
Since I was already a rather systematic person before that, and I was educated by my parents in a very strict and systematic way, I had I have no problem with discipline
Mhm.
and structure.
Mhm.
And so it sort of fit in. I realized very quickly that I had to take care, to save my energy. That was the biggest learning process, or the most hard learning process, how to save your energy for doing roles on the stage.
Mhm.
um, how not in the beginning you are seduced by meeting all these interesting people, and how to learn to stay away from that and to be on your own. And
Yes.
then also at a certain point, as long as you're 25 and 27 and 28, your body will just do everything. And then once you start being 30, you start to realize that you might need also some sport routines. And so then I started swimming, and I took intensive swimming lessons because I was afraid of water, but I decided that swimming might be the best sport for me. And the easiest also to do in a hotel, because you will easily find a good hotel with a swimming pool. Those was not yet. It was not yet the days where every hotel had a fitness center or something like that. It's before those days. It's a long time ago. And so I started taking intensive swimming lessons, and I started enjoying swimming. And I discovered that swimming was an excellent thing. That the breathing in the swimming is basically when you do a schoolslag. How do you say this in English?
What was the word again?
Schoolslag. Is it?
Oh, yeah, breaststroke.
Yeah, that the breathing is exactly the same as you would use for coloratura singing.
Oh,
So after swimming 40 minutes, I would be warmed up. Everything was warm. It was just there. And so, you learn it, but it would never, for me, it never was a problem.
never a chore.
No,
No,
I
no.
was already very structured
Yes.
before I started.
Yes. But I think you're also somebody who just fundamentally has a sort of certain respect for a structure and a system, and
Yes,
you
yes,
adhere to that because it also gives this kind of nice security. And then with these
absolutely.
kinds of roles that you were singing, you needed to be very
Oh
sure
yes,
all
you
the
have to be
time.
on your own very much, and you have to be very, very organized in your thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot of notes.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a
Absolutely.
lot of. If you count the number of little black dots, I might have 20 times more than Brunhilde in Götterdämmerung. I'm not talking in minutes, Suzanne. I'm
No,
just
well, we
talking
will
in
circle
the
back
number of black
to.
dots. So it needs a specific kind of organization, of
Yeah. We
course.
will circle back to the role study in a minute because I think this is also a very interesting question. But I mean, how was that for you, Suzanne? Because as you just explained, so you arrived from the plane, you went back to the theater, but in the meantime, you had been away for some time and you hadn't really established singing contacts in this world in Germany on that kind of professional level before you left. So how was it to sort of create that structure for yourself?
I really didn't have to. It was, I signed the contract and then I mean, I remember the first day of rehearsals. Now, I have to say, uh, pedagogically speaking, maybe that's not a smart thing to do. I will do it anyway, though, because I think there are many paths to get where you need to get to.
Mhm.
I was a horrible student. The only
In
thing
what way?
Well, in any possible way. Well,
Okay.
maybe not every, but the only thing I was interested in was singing. I
Mhm.
mean, music history and counterpoint. I thought that's just a waste of my time. It's a bother. Why would I go there? I'm going to be a singer. What's the big deal about this? It's boring. It's structured.
I think
It,
a lot of people will recognize that.
yeah.
Themselves, I mean.
Piano lesson. Ooh. Of course, my teacher was maintaining a studio in Boston as well. So it was not, we were not in the luxurious situation that she would be there every week. And I really didn't feel at this moment, singing for me was not work.
Mm.
It was something that happened very naturally. It was something, I would select my repertoire and take it to her, and she would do a bit of and then we would do a bit of and did have, though, a very, very dear friend, Stephen Speciale, Stephen, who studied piano at the same time at University of California, and we would literally spend days and nights together. We would lock ourselves into the concert hall. We would put a little thing into the door so the door wouldn't fall shut, and then we would go back at night to the concert hall and experiment with repertoire. I think that really was my
Grounding.
well, that's where I found out about my voice, about how to do it, about what repertoire suits me and what not.
Mhm.
Literally, I mean, and then we started going to competitions because, as I mentioned initially, I couldn't work in America,
Mhm.
but I needed money to pay my rent, and so I would do competitions, and there are lots of little competitions in the area. All the sororities have little competitions,
Mhm.
gamma, delta, beta, flupty, flupty competition, and
Kappa kappa.
yeah, Opera 100 competition that paid $200, but hey, it was $200.
Yeah.
So after a while, I knew I had like my pool of pieces that I could rely on, that you could wake me up in the middle of the night, that I could do.
Mhm.
Dalila being one of them, Va being another one. I would just.
Mhm.
Um, so that's during the studies, and then when I was back in Germany, really, when you enter a steady contract with an opera house, you receive your rehearsal schedule today at 2 o'clock for the rehearsals of the next day,
Mhm.
and then you're really part of a structure. Your musical rehearsals are planned for you. You are given an accompanist. You do a part of the studying yourself, but somebody is there supervising that, making sure that by the time rehearsals start, you know your stuff. This is really how I learned to study. Uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
First day of rehearsals of Zauberflöte, it was very clear the colleagues were much more experienced than me. They were laughing behind my back because I didn't know what foot to put first on stage. We had a moment in Rosenkavalier where I was supposed to sing a line from a building and going like, ist das, es ist mein Mann, ist, well, ist das, es. Exactly.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
an older colleague took me and he said, now, listen, I mean, don't do that because you're covering yourself. Why don't you just, I didn't know. I
Yeah.
didn't know. So I literally learned,
On the job.
yeah, I learned on the job. and it was great learning. It was great learning because after a while it was made very clear to me that the 1 year contract would be turned into more. There was a new opera director coming who then gave me a new contract. I earned more money. I was given more interesting roles, more challenging roles. And as time went on, I realized, okay, as the roles got bigger and more challenging, and then there was already talk about, well, you might be a dramatic soprano, but what do you think? And what do you, I realized for myself, there is stuff I don't know how to do. I'm going to do the roles. I want to do the roles, but there is stuff I don't know what it is, but I don't know what it, I need to find out what it is. And this is then when I started launching. So I was pretty much without a teacher for like 4 years. That went very well. But when the tasks got bigger, I found myself somebody again. And that was not an easy thing to do because, young singers sing Mozart and young singers sing light repertoire, and yeah, but it didn't work for me. I almost killed myself with Dorabella because I just couldn't get the voice to
move around that area.
To knowing what I know now after all these years as a singer and all these years as a teacher. I understand what the problem was, but nobody explained that to me at the moment. So, it was literally learning by doing, and it was like that for a very long time in my life, in my career.
Yeah. But one thing that strikes me is sort of another parallel between the both of you, even though you come from very different backgrounds in that sense about how you approach things, is this sort of curiosity and passion or desire to discover music. And I think that's key, whether you're a good student or let's say maybe a less academically minded student, that is basically the core of it. So first of all, you discover that you have a voice, but if you don't have this endless curiosity about the music itself, then the voice is worthless, right?
Yes.
It's the curiosity about the music, and I would say also, where am I in the music?
Right.
Where do after all these years now, I can truly say one of the tasks that we set out to do for ourselves is to become an expert for our own instrument. Yes, you need a teacher. Yes, it's fantastic to have a teacher. It's fantastic to have a coach. It's fantastic to have, you all need all that. But beyond that, nobody will answer the questions, the most eminent questions for you. It's your job to find those answers. You can go ask. You can go ask and say, I need, how is that? Why is that? What is it? What is it? But if you don't ask, a lot of those questions will remain blank. And this is something sometimes that I'm very, very flabbergasted when I work with some students. You have students who are very curious, and they will come and they say, oh, and I heard this singer, and and this repertoire, and what is it, and do you think I can sing this? And then you have the others who are literally waiting to be spoon-fed. And I'm happy to do that for a while. But to tell you the truth, the spoon-feeding will not get you where you need to be. It will not get you where you need to get to. So may that be an encouragement. And I say that a lot. There is no question that is too stupid to be asked. If you don't ask, you might end up stupid.
Definitely. And I think that you also, part of that asking the questions and this curiosity is about also you're looking for connections, you're looking to understand, you're looking to bring things together, and that also makes you a more three-dimensional performer as well. And at the end of the day, so as we go further into the discussion, we'll talk about it more, but this is also what conductors and directors are looking for. They're not only, of course you have to be able to sing, but nobody wants to have a technical machine. There has to be some charm, there has to be some charisma, there has to be an understanding of what it is that you're bringing. And so it's more than just doing your aria nicely because you've learned all the tips and tricks that your teacher or your coach has told you.
And I like to add to what Susanna said. um, in order to find out what you are, you have to know a large amount of music.
Yeah.
First, you have to, and to try it out. I'm not hiding that I wanted to become a Puccini tenor when I was 15. Now, it turned out I'm not a Puccini tenor, but I know the whole Puccini repertoire because I started listening to it, and I started singing it, all the roles, by the way, not only the tenor parts. I sang the whole thing. And so knowing,
Sexy
being
sei il Trovatore.
absolutely the whole Ring des Nibelungen with all the parts. Only the chorus. I didn't do the chorus parts.
Yeah.
But it's by knowing all this music that you might, and by trying out things, that you might discover that some things don't work so well, that other things work better. And it's also in a little bit then more professional, on a more professional level, by knowing a lot of music and by knowing what you don't do so well, that you learn to appreciate for yourself what you do better than the others.
Mhm.
It is not only by saying, I'm very good in coloratura, but it's also by discovering when I do a part without any coloratura, I have some difficulty to get a profile to my singing. I do nice singing, it's technically correct. The voice has become acceptable through the technical work. But then there comes Mr. X or Mr. Y, who definitely has not my culture, has not my technique, has not this and that. And there he comes, and all of a sudden, this part, which I worked so hard on, shines by something I don't have. So it's also by learning and by doing the things you're less good in that you start realizing why you are good in something.
Yes.
This being good in something, I think, should be continuously fed and nurtured by doing things around. For you to keep understanding what's your strong point, what's your strength, but also for nurturing that and getting a more not a universal singer. I don't believe in those, but getting a singer with a broader vocabulary.
And yet at the same time, I completely agree. And yet at the same time, looking into different looking at the operatic repertoire as a universal thing, and finding out what you're good at and what you're not good at, also shapes your sense of expertise for your own instrument. Because I do not believe that every singer needs to be able to sing everything. It's also in the profession, it's not like this. When we recall the opera talk we had with Daniel Herzog from Augsburg, he also said, if I want to do specialized repertoire, I will bring a specialist for the repertoire, right? It's easy to beat yourself down when you think, oh yes, but I should be able to do this and I'm not. It's one thing to keep up the work, but it's another thing to strengthen what you are already good at. And also what I would like to add, choosing repertoire, of course, is a vocal thing. But the singers or the musicians amongst us, I'm sure you've had the situation where you play something, you sing something that you've never sung before, and immediately it appeals to you. And that makes life easy from day one because there's just something that echoes in you. And then you have other repertoire you should be doing, but it's just should you put it aside? Not necessarily. If it is ground to learn on, keep doing it. But remember why you're doing it, to develop, to access functions, to develop a better understanding of that part of the instrument, that part of the repertoire. Doesn't mean, I'm a horrible coloratura singer. Have I done coloratura? Absolutely. I even received an award for my tisbe in Cenerentola, where I was like, I hated it because I thought, this is, oh God, I have to move the voice. It's so difficult. It's so difficult. But everybody else enjoyed it. And eventually I learned to enjoy it myself because it showed another dimension of my voice, of my singing, and also of my personality.
Yeah.
Personality and the voice they're very connected.
And I would like to just add one little thing to that. I find it interesting from the point of view of students. A lot of students are quick to dismiss something because they're like, oh, yes, but this is easy. It might be easy for you, but that doesn't mean that it's easy for all of your colleagues. And, we should also learn to recognize that sometimes a facility and ease with a certain kind of thing, that is a strength. A strength, it doesn't mean that it's easy for everybody. And we should look and we should recognize what comes naturally to us, and we should enjoy that. But it's quickly forgotten.
If you consider that singing a part on the stage is for 80% crisis management, trying to find on that moment what goes wrong, either it is vocally going wrong, or it's the intonation going wrong, or you can't hear the orchestra, or you can't understand the conductor, or the conductor wants to go quicker than you want, or he is slow where you need. So it's continuous crisis management, and then dealing with the colleagues is still a complete other thing. So I think that what we call in French le chemin de la facilité, the easiest way, is a comfortable one and is very often a right one, because it will allow you to do this crisis management without losing your expression.
Yes.
That's the most important thing, that you don't lose your expression on the stage.
If I may add to that, not only your expression, I mean, I love how you say that, Axel. I couldn't agree more. I mean, a dear friend of mine who was a wonderful conductor and vocal coach who has already left this planet said to me once, we were working on Les Troyens, and I was going, oh my God. And he said to me, look, a lot of times we do not solve problems. We just learn to accept them, embrace them, and work our way around them. And I was like, yeah, but I was a young singer, and I thought, no, I need to, perfection is this thing. Here I am, like, what, 25 years later, have I reached perfection? By no means. Am I longer interested in perfection? By no means, because I know there's so much more. So, but...
and it's a process to getting better. That's it.
And it never ends. The process of getting better or striving to get better, it never ends, right?
Yeah.
But this is also something, a way of looking at it, that is not resignation. That is being very realistic about things and saying, you know what, if I can work my way easy into this repertoire, it will open the path to being free on stage for me, because crisis management involves being free to react to all the multiple triggers that you are dealing with on stage. The conductor, the orchestra, your fellow singers, staging, stuff that you have to do on stage, props. And I always gained a great sense of inner freedom from that, knowing that whatever happens to me on stage, this role I can sing without having to go, oh my God, if just one more thing happens, I will fall apart. This is very important. You might be sick, you might be tired, you might be having a bad day because you've had bad news, you might have had a bad night, and then you still need to go out and do it. And then it's such a gift to be in a role that you enjoy doing, in a role that you know you can do even on a bad day. That be the foundation, and may those roles come your way in multiple numbers.
Yes. So speaking of which, could we hear a little bit about a sort of the role from the moment that you successfully won the audition until opening night? What happens in that time? How do you deal with learning the role before you get to the rehearsals? What can you expect from the rehearsals, etc., etc.? Let's start with Axel, because again, we heard from Susanne that she started where or it was already explained a little bit that you were in this house, but Axel, you were basically always freelancing, right?
I was in the house, which means that nobody took care of my studying the roles.
Right.
I basically had to do it myself and to organize it myself. How does it work? So it's clear that in the repertoire I did, you were supposed to audition with the difficult aria from the part. In Rossini, you mainly have two arias. Every major personage has two arias, and you have very often for the tenors a more easy one and a more difficult one.
So there's no getting away with presenting the easy one.
You don't get away with presenting the easy one, no. And in the best case, you have two difficult ones. A high one and a higher one.
Mm-hmm.
So basically you audition with the aria.
Yeah.
Once you auditioned with the aria and you are hired, you could say that's the first, the first difficulty, which is
Become?
yes, overcome. Then the roles, and this is something I discovered by doing it. The roles are because the first role I learned was Barbiere Siviglia. I learned it with my teacher. It is a long role, but it's not a particularly difficult one.
Mm-hmm.
You have two arias. You have the difficult one at the ending, Cessa di più resistere, the rondo finale, but you seldom, you don't, let's say you don't audition with that. You audition with Ecco ridente in cielo, which is, it's a beautiful coloratura aria, but you can't call it difficult. It's way more easy than all the other stuff. And then you study the role, and there is a lot to sing, but nothing is particularly difficult. When you get to roles like Lindoro in L'Italiana in Algeri, or to the dramatic Rossinis, Zelmira, Ermione, Semiramide, La Donna del Lago, then you come to the fact that the aria is actually the most easy thing in the role. So then you start learning. How did I do that? Learning an aria is easy. You could even learn it by listening to a recording. In my times, there were not so many recordings, so basically you would learn on the score. Very often still in en clé d'ut. How do you say this in English?
Is that the tenor clef?
Tenor clef, yes. So fourth line.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have the critical editions yet. So it were 19th century edition of these bel canto operas, and the tenor always was written in tenor clef, and the soprano would sing in soprano clef. Which is, when you have a quartet, it's very confusing. Anyway, so what would I do? I would first start making a plan of the opera. Just how is the structure? How many arias are there? How many duets are there? How many trios are there? How many quartets are there? And where are the big ensembles? Big ensembles for Rossini, finale primo, as for Mozart. Sometimes finale secondo, but rarely. And then a list of the recitatives. I would always start with the finales, because there are a lot of music to learn. It's not enjoyable to learn it. Mm-hmm. So there also you first make a structure. You try recognizing the blocks. And I made, but I'm a very, for that very organized and a little bit intellectual person. I made structures on paper. I wrote who came in when and what's the team, and to know exactly how this functions, how the harmonics function. I never have been in a Hochschule or in a conservatorium, so I didn't have harmony and I didn't have analysis. I also all sort of invented it, and I got some of it in musicology, of course, but I did that. And then I started with studying before I started studying, I made a plan. I said, okay, how many weeks do I have to study the role? Ideally, you would say I have 6 months. But very often I was getting in late because the star tenor would not come or was too expensive, and so then they start with second choice and third choice. And then, I came in very often at that stage. So often there was not a year or 6 months. Sometimes it was only 3 months or 2 months. I've had 6 weeks, which is tricky. So you make a plan with all the days, and you plan in 6 days a week. You need 1 day off. Mm-hmm. The 6th day, it's a little bit like creation of God, It's a recapitulation of what you have learned in first day, second day, third day, fourth, and fifth. First day, you start learning one recitative. Always take in a recitative, because nobody wants to study them. They're boring. And second, recitative and some music. Second day, another recitative, some music, and recapitulation of what you studied in the first day. And so I made a detailed plan. No need to tell you that the plan never worked out the way it was written. So it needed continuously rescheduling. But that's how you got an overview. And I think it's the worst idea, the worst plan you can have if you are yourself responsible for studying a role, is to take the score, put it on your piano, and start with page 1. that will not work, because you will be in problems at the ending of the opera. You will not know it well enough.
Mm.
So that's how I functioned.
Mm-hmm. And so then, because there's the practicalities of putting the notes into the brain and the body, let's say.
Words. First
Um,
the words, then the notes.
First the words, then the notes.
Always. Because the words will help you remembering the notes.
Mm-hmm. But what is your opinion about the understanding the character? For you, is that linked on the fact that you've done the work on the words, or do you try to study in a specific way or do you see that more as happening in the rehearsal process once you arrive at the theater, for instance?
No, it's too late. For several reasons, it's too late, because in the rehearsing process, again, there is so much crisis management. You don't know what kind of stage director you're going to have, in what kind of positions and weird things you're going to be supposed to do. You don't know what kind of adventures you're going to have with your colleagues and with your conductor. So it's definitely too late. Too late. You need a clear opinion on what your part is, in order also to be able to turn controversial indications into something that makes sense. I'm not against controversial indications at all. They can be the most triggering ones and the most interesting ones, but it has to be turned into sense. I'm not there, if I consider myself an artist, I'm not there to be told what to do.
Right.
If they hire me, I suppose that they hire me because they're interested in an aspect of my personality, and that the singing the high D or the high C is only a part of that.
Yes.
As you said before, we are not, we're not jukeboxes. We're not
just a pair of vocal cords.
So the understanding and the deepening is extremely important, especially for all the music which is not virtuose, which is not purely technical, mechanical.
Yeah.
But that is something I would rather do in the evening. The studying was in the morning. So I warmed up, then I started studying. The afternoon was singing. The studying is at the piano. The afternoon was singing and dealing with technical difficulties. And in the evening, I would first sit with my libretto, with my textbook, trying to see who says what and why, taking note, writing comments on thoughts. And of course, if you have the time, which is definitely not the case if you only have 6 weeks, but if you have the time, you could start reading around and reading perhaps the novel which is at the base of the opera. All this is very interesting. But I think that the primary source for the singer should be the libretto, and a deep understanding of the libretto. Why does my personage says this? And when you start understanding this, and when you make your own thoughts about that, with what kind of intention do I say this? Where does the phrase, which are my thoughts? Is this premeditated, what I say? Is it a reaction because I've heard something? What's my reaction? And all this is work I did in the evening by reading and thinking. And very important, something I didn't do in the beginning of my career, but what I learned from my dear friend André Chagas, that is, he wanted and obliged all his singers, and then I did it as a rule for myself, to create a life as the personage. For example, you are singing Il Conte d'Almaviva, you are singing Carmen, you are singing Mimi, you are singing Brunhilde. Where is she born? Who were her parents or his parents? Did the personage know his parents? Does he come from a rich house? How was this? What did he play as a child? What this whole life before Mimi says, toc, 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 scusi. We have to know what happened, and not just what's her métier. She is an embroidery she embroiders flowers. There is a whole life. Is she alone since a long time? Has she been on the streets with 14? How did she come to that? What is the existence? And that is something that nobody in the audience will notice, but
But
that
we feel it. We
it,
don't know that we feel it, but we feel it.
absolutely, yes, you feel it. And for the singer itself, it enriches so much your way of being on the stage as a living, breathing personage, and not just as somebody who learned the roles, who learned the notes, and who learned the words, and who says them because they are written.
Yeah. Also, one thing that I think for students that can be forgotten a little bit is that sometimes your character will be talked about when you're not on stage.
Oh, definitely.
That's
There
also information that you should know and learn.
stage. You
Because
might
that
learn
will,
something about yourself.
exactly. So, I mean, I've been in the situation where I've been repping and some people have not known the whole opera, and you really see that they get sent out and get asked to only come back once they actually know the entire opera word for word. And, you know, directors are prepared to be ruthless about these kinds of things because that is also your job. Yeah.
I also
So,
think that when you're, just a small thing, when you audition, this is for the students, when you audition with an aria from an opera, you should definitely know whether there are more arias. If you sing Mimi first aria, Che gelida manina, no, that's all for Mimi, you should know that there is Donde lieta uscì, because they might talk about it. All of a sudden, they might say yes, and the second aria, and then you're standing. Well, it just comes from my aria book. There is only one.
I find it shocking that we have to mention that, because that is a given. Also, where is the aria in the opera? Where in the plot of the opera? What is the plot of the aria?
What is the plot of the aria? Yes.
Why am I singing? Why am I saying what I'm saying? Why? Who am I? Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So you've learned the role. It's first day at the opera house. What happens?
Musical rehearsal. Everybody sings it.
Exactly. 2 days, maybe 3 days max.
Mhm.
And then we're into rehearsals.
Lucky you have musical rehearsals. I've done productions where there are no initial musical rehearsals. You go into scenic rehearsals and it sort of happens on the side. So you know your stuff in any case. Yeah.
You have to know it, yes. Perfectly well. It has to be trained and automatized.
Automatic. Yeah.
Automatic, yes, absolutely.
And
Because
then weeks of...
and everybody is going to judge you. Because especially when you're a guest singer, they pay for you. So all the others who might be guest singers or house singers, it doesn't matter, but they're all curious. Everybody is curious about the others. So the first day, everybody starts sitting and, nice soprano. Can she sing? Oh, look at the mezzo. She looks fun. Did she get a high note? Does she get a low note? That's what people think. So I always felt it was quite a stress, this first musical rehearsal.
Yeah. And then you start with the staging. Maybe if you're lucky, 5 weeks of staging, something like this.
That's a long time.
Well, 5 weeks up until premiere, actually. So then you get weeks of staging, then you get the Italian.
Yes.
So that is with the orchestra, but without staging. And then you might have...
Everybody's very tired.
Exactly, because you've also probably had a piano dress rehearsal somewhere around that in full makeup and costumes to see if it all functions.
Costumes will be ready by that time, so you will still be sewn on and at the last second.
That has changed, because usually now what they do is they take the pictures for the program and for the PR in the piano.
Yeah. And then you have a week of working towards the performance, and then it's full on with the orchestra. And basically it's no longer about the singers at all, because it's about the conductor, it's about the orchestra, it's about the technique, it's about the lighting, it's about everything else that needs to be done, right?
Yes, major crisis management. Because I love conductors, but very often conductors get enthusiastic during the piano rehearsals, and they have quick tempi and energetic tempi, and then comes the orchestra, and all of a sudden it slows down. And there you are, and if you have something mechanical, it doesn't matter whether it's mechanical or not, but if you have something mechanical like Finale Barbiere Siviglia, alternando questo quello pesantissimo martello, alternando questo quello you don't, if you have trained it 2 weeks in a certain way, you don't want the tempo to change. But whether it's dramatic repertoire or mechanical repertoire, the problem is the same. It changes all of a sudden in the last week.
Mm-hmm. And what is also interesting, I think, which is difficult for singers, and I think a lot of beginning singers don't realize this. So you start doing runs. And then you have the interval, which is your break. But then in the break, you have to have your makeup redone. You have the language coach coming to correct your language from the first act. You have the assistant conductor who is telling you that you were slightly late on this entrance. And then you have the assistant director telling you, well, you were 2 inches to the left when you should have been 2 inches to the right. And you also have to bring all of that into consideration, right? So it's a lot of information being thrown at the moment that you think that you should be somewhat free. But actually, the moment that you're free is pretty much the moment of the premiere, maybe not even.
I would say
the panic of hoping it's all going to come together. And I know from a lot of singers, it's like, oh, on the second night, the director will have gone home, then I can be free.
absolutely. So when I buy a ticket for an opera performance, if I can avoid the premiere or the second performance, I do it because the singers are exhausted.
Yeah.
And it's by the third or the fourth performance that they have had 2 or 3 days in between. They finally get used with all the, are used to all the difficulties. And that's where they start being themselves.
Exactly. So that's, yeah. So that's the stagione kind of system. What is it then when you're in a house and you're on contract and you maybe they're doing, I don't know, like Carmen on Tuesday, and then they're doing Così on Thursday, and then they're doing Alcina on Saturday. How is that? Because that's a different side of the coin.
Oh yeah. So so let's assume, we have these pieces you mentioned. They're all on the planning for the year, along with ballet happening on Tuesday, and along with something else happening, and a philharmonic concert on Saturday, which you're in the afternoon, and then you have a performance in the evening. Basically, it's pretty much the same. The rehearsal schedules are pretty much alike. Oh, usually it's a 6-week period for the whole production, from first day of musical rehearsals to opening night. You have done your studying in advance, just like a freelancing singer. Of course, you know most of the colleagues you're going to be working with, so that situation, that showcasing of the first day usually is reduced. Unless, of course, you have a tenor coming in, or and then it's like, ooh, we have a tenor. Huh?
He needs to mark his territory.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh, well, let's see, huh? Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing, except that you are not only trying to get that one production into your brain and into your body, into your voice. You might be rehearsing 4 hours in the morning, Carmen, singing Carmen. Then you have a break of 4 hours. There is a law that in German theaters that takes care of the pauses. Then you have a break of 4 hours, and then you go in the evening, either to rehearse 4 more hours from 6 to 10, or to sing a performance. Now, if you have a nice director, he's going to let you off either in the morning rehearsal, or he's going to let you out an hour early, so that you can, do your grocery shopping, wash your laundry, have a visit to the doctor, pick up your children, whatever you need to do, in order to then have maybe a meal and a nap, a round of warm up, and go to the theater in the evening. So you are exhausted on a physical level, on a mental level. If you think memorizing one opera and abrufen, what is the word? Accessing it, accessing the performance potential on the point is difficult. Well, wait until you get onto a steady contract when you're doing 3 roles at the same time, studying a 4th one, because you have been hired for a summer festival and you're doing something, or because the rehearsals for the first premiere of the fall production are going to happen before the summer break. So that means you're going to have to have that role ready for study, because there will only be a week or 2 weeks of rehearsals in the fall. So it is, yes, you get paid on a monthly salary, but basically you do nothing but really go to the theater and do what you need to do. That's great. It's wonderful. I would really advise any young singer to try to go for that, because that's what you do. You train, you sing, it's all in one, and you really kind of give up the inner resistance.
But
And
it is also a baptism of fire.
absolutely, and you give up perfectionism, because there is no way you're just going to go and do, as Axel said, the word crisis management. You go and you do what you can. You're in the process, and you go and you do what you can, and a lot of times you'll be very happy, and after a while it will not matter anymore whether that high C on that night was great. I did it. I came alive out of the performance. I have another one on Saturday. Let's see how that goes. It's great. It's great.
Also, because um, doing all these things at the same time, I have not done it, but I have been as a guest in productions in houses with a repertoire. So that means that I sang perhaps 3 performances after the premiere, and then I was not there for a month, and then I would come back for a performance. And for the other soloists in the theater, they would be for the performance there, but of course they had been doing all kinds of other things in between. And then what shocked me the most is that you're not sure to have a rehearsal with the orchestra.
Good point.
Imagine something like Semiramide without an orchestra rehearsal. It's just madness. It's condemned to go wrong.
I did my first Turandot without orchestra rehearsal. I was terrified. But it was either do or die. I mean, I walked out, but I wanted to sing the role. So it was really kind of like, can I prepare myself to the point of being, of course now, Turandot, the Puccini, the music is not, it's complicated in the musical sense. It's not like you have any surprises in there. I would have not wanted to do that with Elektra, for example. That it's impossible. But I do know colleagues and friends who have done it.
But not the first time they did it.
It's the first time they did it. They did it.
They're courageous.
They are very courageous, and it's a matter of, you need to know that if you do this kind of thing, nobody will knock at your dressing room door and go, "Oh my God, we realize you had no orchestra rehearsals. Fantastic, congratulations! You will be measured with the same
yardstick."
Yeah, so just again, it goes back to the point that we discussed before: knowing yourself very well, knowing your instrument very well, knowing your repertoire very well. That might increase chances of being able to do something like this without being eaten alive. If you have a choice, I strongly recommend not to do it.
There is also a thing about rehearsals, which is why the rehearsals are so important. Of course, we agreed, or we both confirmed that knowing the role perfectly well on the very first day is selbstverständlich. It's an evidence. We can't consider anything else. But very often you will have learned the role. I remember, for example, with my first Barbiere, which was the very first role I took on, with my first Barbiere, it's only in the rehearsal process that I learned how to balance my energies.
How to pace yourself.
How to pace yourself, yes, because it's a long run.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it is Elektra, which is an extremely long run, or Barbiere Sevilla, which is just for the tenor, if you sing all the musical bits, all the tenor phrases after each other, you need 1 hour, 40 minutes of rehearsal time with the pianist. Then you have just sung every note 1 time. So it's a lot of singing, and you have to get that in your body, the length, not the music. The music you can do easily at home, but this length and being able to sing what it demands at the ending of the performance, that really needs a rehearsal process.
But even, I mean, no matter, this was always something that filled me with what shall I call it, amazement, awe, that left me a bit flabbergasted when I would do a production and my colleagues would be marking 3 weeks into the rehearsals. And lately, the last 20 years, I've been singing big roles, title roles. There you would expect that you do a lot of marking in order to preserve your energy. Well, the opposite is the case. I do not recall a single Parsifal or a single, not to mention Turandot, but a single Electro rehearsal where I did not sing out, because every rehearsal is a new opportunity to make the body understand the singing one note, singing a high note is not the story. It's how do I get to the high note, what's before the high note, what is after it, what is the also in terms of movement. You will find the singers out there who have not done productions, you will find that your first production or the first couple of productions, when all of a sudden you are singing and you have to become very physical on stage, it takes you, I mean, you're exhausted, everything hurts. And then you're going to be like, maybe you're going to be like, oh, but I can't because well, guess what? That's what you're going to be doing. So it's training. It's like you will not be able to run a marathon without running. You cannot sit on the couch contemplating running. You're going to just go out and do it. Put on your shoes, get good shoes, as Birgit Nielsen said, you need some good shoes. Put on those shoes and run. You don't have to run a marathon every time. You don't have to come out of it in perfect shape every time. But if you don't do it, you will not get there. And for me, if I just may add something about the study process of a role, I mean, it couldn't be more different what I do, because for me the starting point is, and this is actually of course it's different music that I do. For me, my first step is always the personnage, is the character. This is my starting point. I read when there's like, let's take Carmen. First thing I do is I read the novel, and that gives me a lot of input about the character. And then it kind of happens by itself that I create a biography for my character. And then by the time I get to, of course, then it's rhythm and notes and creating longer structures with the music. But by that point, I already, I don't have to then go, it's already, I understand when Carmen comes out for the habanera or for the little recit in the habanera. I already know why the habanera is the way it is, because of the way Carmen is, because of what her story is. So for me, the starting point really is different. And also in terms of structure, I've made it, I completely agree that sometimes the arias are the easiest things. When we look at the Verdi roles, for example, when we look at, the arias, let's look at Ballo. You have two big arias, and they're different in many ways. But what makes it difficult is all the ensemble stuff. And for a voice like mine, who was never, I'm not a high soprano, so the arias are much more central in Ballo. And then you have the ensembles that are much higher. So girls, guys out there, do not judge a role by the arias. Go check out the ensembles. This is also something that is really true for operetta, where you're like, you're the operetta diva with a heavy voice, and you're going, what, how, what, oh, yeah. So, but anyway, again, the difference in role study that you hear from us is another encouragement. Find your own way of accessing the role. Do what you need to do, but take the risk of finding out. You will not, nobody will spoon feed it.
Yeah, I think that what is interesting is that you both have different starting points, but the message is basically the same. It's like, it's your responsibility to do a deep dive into the music, into the text, so that you have something of quality that is dependable, organized, reliable, and something to offer both the conductor and the director on the first day of rehearsal, end of discussion.
Yeah, and you're going to most likely, well, at least in the productions that I've done, you have kind of come to an agreement with your personnage. You've kind of come up with an interpretation, and you kind of think you know your way around. Good, great, fantastic starting point. And then you will be put into a bathtub.
Yes.
You're not going to be dying in bed or on no, you'll be lying in a bathtub without water, pretending to be naked. Now, guess what? There goes not your core interpretation, but there goes all the nice stuff that you kind of assembled and accumulated around your figure, and you go, oh, this is the moment when I fall to my knees. Yeah, well, maybe not. And this is what I meant when I said the inner freedom. You want to know the role so well that even if that voice inside of you says, there's no way I can perform this, I also don't want to perform the role like this. Yes, you will. And you will make it if you have the inner freedom and you know the role so well that you are free to, again, take the risk and take the plunge and take the leap of faith and trust your director and trust your conductor. And, you know, you'll be doing different tempi and different and all kinds of fabulous, wonderful. So after 6 weeks, hopefully, I always said about myself, you know, after you're like a good Wiener Schnitzel. Somebody took that little wooden hammer and just, you know, flattened you out, and you feel every muscle that used to, and every ligament, but you know the role and yourself in the role inside out. Fantastic starting point for the next production of the same role, which will put you into another framework again.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wonderful. And this for me is innovation in opera, you know.
Yeah, that's where the thrill comes.
That's
Absolutely.
where the magic happens.
Yeah.
I would like to add one small thing. Susanne, you mentioned marking, people who were marking on stage. I hated marking first because I agree with you. The role has to, you have to get it in your body in the moment with the music that comes at that time of the evening and with the feeling of what has been before. But moreover, if you sing parts like the bel canto repertoire, where there are a lot of high notes and where they're important, you see colleagues who sing everything and they leave out the high notes. Now, I do understand that you're not going to repeat in a stage rehearsal 20 times your high C at the ending of the duet. Nobody does that. But at least once, because if you don't bring out your high notes every day at least once, you will sort of say, oh, today I feel a bit tired, I will not do it. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow, oh, you're again a bit tired, you're not doing. Oh, I didn't have the good shoes, I'm not doing it. And finally, you're postponing the singing of the high, heavy stuff. And then comes the day where the conductor said, now you have to sing. And then people are often so scared that it doesn't come out.
Yes.
So I thought it's not ready necessarily, because it's also a training process if you don't do it. However, sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's what I wanted to say. So sing your high notes at least once a day, otherwise you'll get very afraid.
However, I would like to add something. I agree, completely agree. But you want to have a plan B for those days, ladies, those days where the high notes or the low notes, depending on who you are, what you are, might become very difficult for, biological reasons. You want to have a plan B that does not make the conductor or the audience feel cheated, but that gives you, a release and a relief. If I feel it's not going to happen tonight, it's not going to happen, but I will offer something of equal or somewhat equal value, of excitement, of thrill, it's a good thing to have a plan B.
Definitely. And I think also from the other side, from the perspective of, sitting with the conductor, I also know that somebody who is just constantly marking and then they always mark the same section, that really starts to create consternation amongst the music staff. And there starts to become a discussion, okay, we give this person one more day and then we're going to have to approach them discreetly to ask them to sing fully out because we haven't actually heard it being sung full out yet. And, there's a difficult thing happening on stage. And are we sure that this person is actually capable? And then everything gets nervous. And so you only have to do it once. And then it reassures everybody in the room. And then you can go ahead and mark, but you need to just, because it's also been the other way around where somebody has been marking and marking and marking. And actually because they were not comfortable with how the staging was working with it. And they ended up not doing a good job on stage because they hadn't shown that the two were not compatible. And it was a pity because ultimately he sacrificed his own performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is also a very important part what you said. The two were not compatible. Sometimes you are perfectly able to sing something, but then you decide to mark in the stage rehearsals. You get into some, physical things that you just can't do while you're singing the music at a certain tempo or pace or rhythm. It has to be slower, or you get out of breath. So it's extremely important to combine both. And if you tried it 5 times singing in full voice and it doesn't work, then you can say to your stage director, I'm sorry, either we do it slower, either I get a break to breathe, or we change something.
Even depending on whom you're working with, the conductor or the stage director, if you are willing to let them be part of the process, meaning that I will try to do what you would like me to do. I will do it. I will do it more than one time, and we will see over the course of 5 or 6 days or rehearsals if it's possible or not. If it's not possible, it will become evident. They might say it's your problem, but eventually it's their problem because, or it's, let's say it's not their problem, but we want to make things work. We want things to work out. So, and then you can start offering an alternative that might give the same effect or a similar effect, but will give you better circumstances to do your singing. And also, we're different bodies. Not every clothing style looks great on everybody, and also not every movement looks good in anybody. And you, especially when you're double cast, can become tricky because there's not much time to rehearse with 2 casts. And the colleague is doing this, but you feel it's when you do this, it's just not right. Sometimes it's a good thing not to make a big fuss out of it. Just offer something else that works and hopefully works. And yeah.
Yeah. So I think that we could carry on talking for about another 12 hours because it's really fascinating and there's just so much and the conversation flows extremely easily. But I would like to maybe for now ask one final question. I don't know, then maybe we might have some questions from the internet. I'm not sure. But I would like to ask you both to talk about a highlight of your career and maybe if you're brave, a low point. The second one is not necessary, but a highlight I would definitely like to hear.
Axel, you want to start?
Why do I have to start? Yes, I can start. A low point, yes. There are many.
Right in. Taking the bull by the horns.
I think a low point was Rigoletto. And I was seduced by a conductor whom I will not name to Rigoletto. After I did Traviata, which I was seduced by the agent to do because I was getting a little bit too old to do Barbiere Siviglia and Elisir d'Amore and Don Pasquale and all these kind of sweet, young, little jumpy things. So they wanted me to find a new repertoire, which is something, it's not like going to buy a new pair of shoes. It should come to you, and it doesn't necessarily come in the way they think. I think I might have found a new repertoire in completely different music. But then the agents are not into this. They are in their style of music with their type of theaters. So, okay, the first thing that offered itself was Traviata. Of course, I had been singing the duets. I had been singing the aria before. So, okay, let's start and study Traviata and see what happens. And then, okay, we rehearsed it and it went quite well. I would never buy a ticket to hear myself in Traviata, but it was okay. It was there. The next step was Rigoletto. And I said already to this conductor, but you do Rigoletto and Traviata, it's not the same. And he said, yeah, but I promise you the orchestra will be down and, we want you to sing. I really attach very much importance to the aria of the second act, Parmi vedere le lagrime. That's really the highlight of it. and you will be able to sing that beautifully. And yeah, okay, I start studying. And with piano and everything works, and with lots of encouragement. And then I come until the point of the orchestra rehearsals, and I felt it was just no way. By the time I arrived to La Donna e Mobile, which is insane, not a difficult thing, but I was muscularly so exhausted that my muscles really lost all the flexibility, and that the high B natural, which for my world where I was living was definitely not a high note, and a very comfortable one, and then on pensier, on the air. So it's something you can call me at 4 o'clock in the morning, do pensier, and I'll do it. It wouldn't come out because the muscles were stiff from this extreme opening of the chest to make the largeness of the Verdi phrases. And I knew it before I started. And I was so encouraged to go there and that they would help me. And when the orchestra came in, nobody helped me. And the orchestra was just true Verdi, which I knew I couldn't offer. So I walked out, which was a very expensive thing. Well, it was that or dying on stage. So that was a very expensive thing to do, because when you walk out, you're supposed to pay for the guy who jumps in.
Yeah.
And okay, I walked out. So that was the low point. And the high point was definitely probably not my most beautiful singing. I don't think it was, but it was the moment I enjoyed singing the most, and that was Semiramide in Palermo. Because the first time Semiramide, because it's the role I was dreaming of. That's really something, and it's a fantastic opera. And already as a child, I had the LP set with Joan Sutherland and Marilyn Horne and Bonnish conducting. And I just loved Semiramide, and I loved the dimension of it, and the ensembles, and the first tercet, and the quintet, and the finale primo, and the two arias. And when I finally got it, it was a very hard job, but it was a party from the first moment until the last, because it was just the music that I had the impression it was written for me. I don't think I sang it so well. I think I was better in Barbiere, but I loved it from the first until the last second, and nothing seemed impossible for me in that part. Though it was a struggle.
And that's a sort of a very I don't want to say it's rare, because it's not rare, but there's something very beautiful to hear. Just kind of like you dreamt of something, and then the reality didn't disappoint you. It lived up to the expectations, and that's the best thing, actually.
Also because the colleagues were fantastic, and the conductor was great,
and everything just aligned.
But then it's Semiramide, what can you do? You can't do so much. But yeah, it was, and the weather was beautiful, and the hotel was nice, and the theater is fantastic, and it has
just one of those great things.
Yes, and you get applause after the first set already, and then you get an applause after your aria, and
fantastic.
One of those moments where you think, well, this is definitely why we do it.
Right, exactly. And for you, Susanne?
I was trying to sort of go through the archives of my mind, and I really have to say, I have been really fortunate. I've had a lot of highlights. I've had a lot of highlights. Let me start with a low one though. One thing was really, it was low in more than one sense. I was doing Falstaff at the Royal Danish Opera in Copenhagen. Old production. Ingvar Wiksell was singing Falstaff. Very famous colleagues, and I was I was doing quickly, lowest role, and there was a performance with the Danish Queen, Dronning Margrethe, in her royal loge, and and she's very active in the theater, and she designs costumes and sets, and I was like, oh my god, the queen. And I thought I was being so nifty and so awesome and so fantastic that the big sentence, the big phrase that quickly sings this reverence on a very low note. Here comes Miss Schmack, quite young, quite, and I do a big reverenza under the royal loge to the queen, reverenza, and nobody thinks it's funny. He didn't acknowledge it. The audience didn't. I was so embarrassed. I'm not even sure, I mean, looking back, I'm not even sure if anybody actually understood what I was trying to do. It was just so embarrassing. But I mean, that was maybe.
You know what? If that's the low light, I think you've had a career pretty well lived.
To keep, of course, I also had my share of struggles vocally. As you all know, I started as a contralto, then went into dramatic mezzo, then went into dramatic soprano, then went into dramatic Zwischenfach. I've done it all. Highlights for sure. I mean, that production of Elektra under very difficult circumstances was a life's dream come true for me. One of the other highlights for sure was a gala performance of Turandot with Jose Cura, whose energy and whose presence and it was just, I don't know what it sounded like, but it was, for me, it was a magic moment on stage. It was amazing. There were a lot of highlights. Parsifal also, because the sheer dimension of this piece and the sheer, it's 5 hours, and it's like you're entering a world and you're not leaving it until the last chord has sounded. It's magical. The light and that music is just divine. I've been very fortunate, really, and on many levels. So
nice. And so, just one question: is there anything that you want to mention? I've asked a lot of questions, but is there anything that you feel that you absolutely must impart or share?
I would have something.
Do, please.
Well, in fact, I read this question: which advice would you give to your younger self? And that really touched my soft spot. I have a lot of those, as you know. That really, and out of all the things I would tell myself, my old self, to my young self, I would tell myself to listen and trust my instincts. If I would have trusted my instincts, every time that little parrot on my shoulder went, sure about this? If I would have listened to my gut feeling, I would have been spared some trouble. And I know it's never easy, because I'm kind of having an inner monologue here with myself. Do we need technique? Absolutely. Does technique replace instinct? Absolutely not. Do they need to walk together? That is the best possible solution. If you're not sure if your instinct is speaking, find somebody to talk to about this, whether it be the teacher you trust, your vocal coach, a friend, a fellow singer. Just try to acknowledge that voice that is inside of you. It might not be no need for alarm, but it might be a good advisor in some situations. So trust your instinct as much as you trust your technique and your teacher.
Yeah, very nice.
And the only thing I would like to add.
Excellent thing, please.
Now it is, we have been speaking about the difficulties, the demands of this métier, and how difficult it is once you got to the contract, because basically that's what we were saying today. In the talk with Daniel, for example, we were talking about how to get to the contracts. First difficulty, if you manage to study well. Second difficulty is, once you have the contract, what we were talking about today, what are the demands? But independent of all these difficulties and all these sacrifices, if you can call them like that, because I never experienced any of that, I think it is the most beautiful métier in the world. And being on a stage, in a costume, with a spotlight on you and with an orchestra playing for you and 1,000 people sitting there and listening to you and being silent is an undescribable thing.
Mm.
So it's worth, everybody who is convinced that he should do it should really try it and not give up before it's clear that either it works or that a person really is not made for it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I hear this kind of from a lot of different singers. It's like you have the job part of it, and that is everything that we discuss. And it can be difficult and it can be challenging. And sometimes it can be so challenging that it can make you want to walk away. But on the other hand, that moment of being on stage, being a part of something so incredibly phenomenal and awe-inspiring, and being with amazing colleagues and singing this glorious music on this incredibly moving text, there's something that is so irreplaceable about that moment that it will pull you back time and time again. And therefore you put up with, the slightly itchy costumes in the early mornings and the late nights, and the fact that, you're not going to go need to stay at 11 o'clock at night, even though you really want to, and also get drunk but yeah, that you do all of these things because this is something that we cannot even explain. And once you felt it, and once you understand that it comes also because you have this enormous connection for the music and for the art and for the passion, and this all comes together, that's what drives it. And that makes you able to accept all of the other stuff that goes alongside it, right?
It is a vocation.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that's what keeps the spark alive. Do you lose the spark at times? Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it okay to lose it? Sure, it happens. Life is no vacuum. And it happens to the best of us. But keep in mind, if it's just that little tiny fingernail of spark, and I'm going to start crying now, so we have to stop. Remind yourself why you got into it in the first place.
Yeah.
That can mean taking out your favorite song. It can mean, it doesn't matter what key you sing it in. It doesn't matter if you hit the high note. Just get out that song.
Yeah, exactly. I like to imagine it's like you have a little flame burning inside you, and that flame is your passion for the art, and you have to keep the flame alive no matter how tiny it gets.
Absolutely.
Is that not something that Gustav Mahler said? Instead of adoring the ashes, we need to work to keep the spark alive.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really fascinating, and I think this is a perfect moment for me to say thank you to both of you, because this is what it's about. Sometimes we can be so busy with what we should all do and how it should go, and it seems all so overwhelming. But I think probably even the most inexperienced of students can recognize what you're talking about in this exact moment if they really have that connection to the music. And when you keep that's why we do it. And I'm really glad that you shared this moment with us. So thank you so much. Miriam, I don't know, are there any questions? We don't hear you.
There was one question, but it's like 1 hour ago. So actually, I don't know what he really means. It's from Alexander. He said, do you think it still could be possible nowadays? I guess, because it's 1 hour ago and we talked about a lot of things, I guess he refers to your path into the profession. Yeah, when you were talking about being discovered in the contest, but not because you won, just in the initial phases, or just because somebody heard you and said, yeah, I believe in you, so I impulse your career. I'm assuming, but because of the time, I think it's about that.
Let's answer that question. I mean, I'm not the singer here, but I will just jump in and say, I think that it still absolutely works that way. Basically, every career only needs one person to launch it.
Yeah. And for you as a singer to keep, every time somebody hears you and is interested, it's like you give a promise. And then your job is to stand up for this promise, to make it, to keep your promise, or to give the best to keep your promise. And in fact, I remember my first agent approached me in a staging rehearsal of a minuscule role, And he came in the break and I was appalled. I was so young and stupid and arrogant. And I thought, how can he hasn't heard me in this role. I mean, I didn't sing anything. And well, he heard it, right? And it's really, this is something I also learned. No role is too small. No theater is too small. Nothing is too unimportant. You want to make sure that you treat every role you do and every theater you work for and in and with the same love and the same respect and the same dedication. And then people will hear you and the word of mouth spreads, and you want to make a name for yourself of being dedicated and trustworthy and reliable and well prepared and kind and team player and not a stupid arrogant cow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You loved cows.
Oh, which brings me back. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a recurring theme. It was a starting team, and now it's a closing team.
I'm brilliant, am I not? I always manage.
Amazing. I love it. I love it. I mean, I remember a friend of mine who's also a singer saying to me, everything changed when I realized that the casting directors need me as much as I need them. And it sounds arrogant to put it like that, but the simple matter is you need singers to be able to put on the opera. Somebody has to do the job.
Somebody must do it.
It's a win-win situation, right? So singers out there, this is a very good point. Don't think you need to go begging to be hired. You are trying to offer something and make it seen. And that is the task that, we all are busy with. Yeah. But I'm a super Abigail. Thank you so much for being our host tonight.
Thank you, Abigail.
Yes, it's a real pleasure to talk with you both.
Because also you managed to keep the two of us in.
I was going to say the same thing. Name us.
You know what? I'm used to herding cats at home, so
You were taming the beasts.
Absolutely.
And for all of you out there watching, or who will be watching in the aftermath, because I know the weather is fantastic. Maybe you're sitting outside now and you'll be watching on YouTube.
Sorry for interrupting. We have a last minute question.
Very good.
Yeah, because now, looking back, do you have a biggest regret of something you did or didn't do? That's a question from Vasiliki.
You did or you didn't do?
Yeah.
Not concretely, I would say, but this is true for life as well. I think that looking back, sometimes we get stopped by our perfectionism or by fear, and it keeps us from doing stuff. You know what? Everybody's cooking with water, and they might be less perfectionist, and they go for the job and they do it, and you might want to ask yourself, did they do it better than I could have done it? So don't allow yourself to be stopped by fear.
And try, Susanne is younger than I am. I'm on the, let's say, on the verge of what is still possible to or let's say the age where you still can appear on a stage, but it's really the last years. I think it's important when you came to, let's say, to 2/3 of your career, not to have regrets anymore, and to be thankful of what it has been, to be happy what it has been and what it has given to you. And of course, I wanted to sing Othello. And of course, Susanna, yes, you also wanted to sing Othello. We could do it both. You do the low notes, I do the high ones. But you see, there is a point where there should be no regrets anymore, because it doesn't help you forward.
That's what I say. It's life. Singing is life, and life is singing, and it's, we do it. Yeah. Any more questions? I see.
No more questions.
I would say as well, one thing that strikes me through all of the things that you have talked about, in whichever form, is kind of fortune favors the brave.
Indeed.
Whether that's, walking into a theater and saying, hi, I'm here, or walking out of a theater and saying, no, not for me, or all of the things in between. But, when you jumped, you really jumped with both feet. And I think maybe that is one of the strongest things to come out of this evening. You know, you can't hedge your bets.
You shouldn't.
Right?
You shouldn't.
No, and as John Lennon said, you know, the life happens while you're out having fun.
Mm.
You might be missing out on pressure on things because you feel like, oh, I'm not ready if I only have had 6 more weeks or 3 more months or 1 more year. We always feel that way. In every role I've sung in my life, I felt like, oh, if I only had, you know, just 4 more weeks. Well, so do what you do it with conviction. Mistakes are part of the path. Embrace them, as I think we did. Well, do we have a choice? No. But if in terms of regret, embrace the mistakes, embrace the journey. That's really the best thing you can do. That's also why we're doing music talks, to make everybody part or understand we're all on the same journey on different stages of it, but we're all on the same journey. We would love to hear from you because we're planning the next season of Music Talks.
Yes.
What would you like to hear from us? What would you like to explore? What would you like to speak about? How would you like us to proceed? We need to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. We have the Facebook page, so please go onto the Facebook page and post us messages. So, this would be a topic. I'm so interested in this. Could you organize a topic? Could you find somebody who can speak about this? And we'll do our search and try to be, responding to your wishes, to your desires.
Yes. So again, nothing is too stupid to be shared or to be asked. Pop us messages. You know where to find us. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. Come find us and please let us know what you need, what you would like. And then we can start into a next season of Music Talks, Opera and More.
Brilliant.
Starting in October.
Yeah. So I should also take this moment then, maybe on behalf of everybody who cannot say it right now, but Axel, Miriam, Susanne, thank you for organizing this season's Music Talks. They've all been completely different. It's super interesting. And yes, look forward to next season.
Thank you for being part of the team, Abigail. Also, Axel, I'm super excited. I think we can really move mountains if we set our heart to it. That goes out to everybody out there as well. So let's keep moving and stay healthy, everybody. Get vaccinated.
Indeed. Have a wonderful summer. Keep the passion alive. Keep the flame burning.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you in October.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.